I'm super happy to be here and super happy to share my experience because I think it's important. I just think it's very important for just someone like myself to be vulnerable and to maybe I can affect somebody in a positive way that is like kind of on the edge, on the verge, on the like thinking about it, you know, like I don't know. And there's an incredible stigma within law enforcement with mental health. Obviously, you know, plant medicine is not plant medicine to them. It's drugs, and so there's not this. They don't get it yet, you know. And I want to try to help be a part of them getting it.
Well, I always have such deep gratitude for anybody that comes on and shares and is willing to open up and share some of that vulnerability with our community and with the audience. You know, and it pays dividends. I'll tell you that it pays dividends to share with, you know, with personal growth and journeys and just kind of with that ripple effect as well. You know, I always like just kind of kicking it off and, you know, letting you share, you know, kind of share the journey of your experience. And, you know, it could be, you know, just kind of giving us a little bit of the set and setting and a little bit of the backstory, and then, you know, kind of crafting the story around the experience. And, you know, we kind of can be fluid and flexible from there and, you know, kind of talk about any of the aftermath. But yeah, we've got Rob on, who's been gracious to share his story as a retired deputy sheriff and someone who's recently found plant medicine and has found the, you know, the transformational impacts that it's been making. So I'll kick it over to you and let you take it away.
Okay. So I'd done mushrooms as a young adult, like very minimal, nothing, no hero dose or anything like that. But that's probably like a 19-year-old, a couple times with friends. No, you know, not a big deal. Prior to law enforcement, I had a business. I owned a gym. Eventually went into law enforcement and did several jobs within law enforcement. I worked in the jail. I worked in the airport. I worked patrol. I worked in some special operations divisions, and finished up my career as a motorcycle officer. In 2018, I had an accident on the bike. Ended up ripping my thumb tendon, my shoulder, having to have like a bunch of surgeries on the shoulder, my bicep, and both my knees. And during that recovery, I had a lot of time to sit at my house by myself and think about just how angry, how angst-filled I'd been, how I had not treated my wife or my family the best that I should have. And in the way that I was kind of like, this was all coming to me was I would see things happening, and I would kind of say to myself, wow, that used to really piss me off. Why? And I could not figure it out. And I just kind of started this journey during 2019 of trying to feel better, trying to feel normal. And it was, you know, everything from, you know, yoga. I've always been an exercise guy. So yoga, you know, working out weights, cardiovascular, journaling, meditation, guided meditation, all kinds of things. And I could not get past a certain point of my anger and my anxiety was incredible. And so I had heard different things on podcasts about plant medicine. I started researching it. I had seen that there was there was some programs for veterans, and I could not find anything for first responders. I had sought trying to volunteer for some different programs. I never got any response. And then I came across an article about a group called the Siren Project. And the Siren Project was started by two firefighters. And it was for, I thought it was for firefighters originally. And so I have a buddy that's right now going through retirement, and he's struggling. And so I said, dude, this sounds perfect for you. Why don't you explore this? Um, and he didn't want to have any part of it. And so I called up the founder of the Siren Project, and I asked her. I said, "Hey, I'm not a firefighter, but I'm a retired deputy. Is this for a retired deputy?" She's like, "Yeah, it's for all first responders." And so I was like, "Oh my god, perfect. Let me put an application in." And so the Siren Project is it's a nonprofit organization that they pay for your retreat. So they have been, obviously they have to raise money, but they said, "Hey, we're all filled up until 2025. You know, so you have to wait." And so I was like, "All right, But I also thought in the back of my head, I imagined somebody was going to drop out, and I'm retired, so I have a lot of free time. So I'd send her a message every couple of weeks and just say, "Hey, I'm good to go. I'm doing everything that you're asking to do as far as they have a pre packet that they give you. I'm doing everything. I can go on short notice. I mean, you can tell me tomorrow, and I can get on a plane and go." So it was after a couple of those, she called me and she said, "Hey, I got a spot opened up September 18th." And so that was like mid-August. And I was like, "Yeah, let's do it." And so, that started the whole uh, process of getting prepared even more. And so, no alcohol, no edibles, no caffeine. And I had not been a big drinker. My dad was also in law enforcement. My dad was a functioning alcoholic. And so I always kind of stayed clear of self-medicating that way. Um, but when, kind of edibles became legal, and I was just like, okay, I'm going to take these edibles because they were helping me sleep. And because I have a real hard time sleeping, bad insomnia. And so, I was taking edibles every single day, and that wasn't really hard to give up or anything like that. And then I, obviously had to get off caffeine, which was pretty difficult. But so the program for them is you go down to Puerto Vallarta. They send you down there. They have facilitators down there, and the lady that is running it down there has been doing this for a long time. She's worked with the Marines. She's worked with the Department of Defense, so she's very familiar with kind of the first responder operator syndrome mentality, and so she was phenomenal too. We had a lot of pre-calls, and there was 7 of us that went. I was down there with 5 firefighters and an EMS guy, and so it was awesome. I mean, it was phenomenal. Like we were in a beautiful house down in Puerto Vallarta. We had a medicine man. We had the whole ceremony, the whole tribal aspect of it. I did not really know what to expect. The first night we kind of started it off with rapé up the nose, and then there was another one in the eyes that I don't really remember what that was called. Are you familiar with the one they put in the eyes?
I don't know, but I
Okay,
yeah,
all
the
right.
rape or hape when you get when you get that tobacco
Yeah, is that
towards the
rapé?
nostrils, man. It's both.
Okay,
It's both. But yeah, that's a
yeah.
that'll get you going. That'll get you started.
Well, and my thing was like, one of my intentions, was I'm not going to be a lone wolf. I'm going to go and I'm going to put myself out there because I know firefighters are very communal. They, you basically live together, you eat together. in my environment, I'm most of the time I'm by myself. I'm making a patrol stop by myself. I might have a cover deputy, but I knew that they were going to bond really quick. So I was like, I'm going to put myself out with this. So pretty much everything we do, I'm going to volunteer for first. I'm going to get really involved. And so yeah, I was the first one to do everything, and so I just really had no clue on how that was going to go. Yeah, he shot the tobacco up my nose, and and you're just kind of like, and the throw up bucket sitting right there just in case, and then the stuff in the eyes just burns, and I mean, I can't scream or do anything like that. So, but it was good. It was a good kind of stair step into the whole thing because it showed um, how much they cared, that they were going to take care of you, because it's a little scary to go to a foreign country, and you I didn't really know exactly what I was getting into. I mean, there was a workup, and they did medical stuff prior to me going down and all that stuff, but you still just don't know. So it was a great introduction to the medicine man, and getting blessed with tobacco. All of those things were phenomenal, and that was the first night. And so then the second day we fasted in the morning, and then we did a bigger ceremony because this was our psilocybin day. This was our mushroom day, and we we did a big ceremony. There was another tribal female from Peru that was down, and it was just beautiful. And then we did a rose petal bath prior to taking our mushrooms, and then once we did those things, we went underneath a covered patio, and this house was right on the water, right on the ocean, and so we were seven of us underneath this covered patio, and it had started raining too, so it was super intense, and then they're playing the music and they're singing, and so the medicine man, he's getting all of our psilocybin, our mushrooms ready, and we had mixed them with orange juice. He did like a private little blessing to each one of us before we drink our orange juice, and then you know drank our hero's dose of orange juice, laid down, put the eye covers on, and probably, I guess, maybe 30 minutes, started seeing some lights and started kind of going, okay. And actually started feeling my muscles twitching a bit. And so I was like, okay, here we go. And so then my intentions going down, I'll share what they were I wanted to connect with my grandparents. I wanted to connect with my dad who'd passed away, and my grandpa passed away. Connect with my son who's still alive, but I needed to kind of make amends with him on some things, and I wanted the medicine to help me, and help guide me with that. Same with my wife. I wanted to make amends with her and hopefully have the medicine help do that and guide me. And then my mom, I wanted to connect with my mom. Those were the big ones that that was my intention, going down in intentions, not expectations. They really were focused on that with us prior to going down. And for obvious reasons. So I started, in the journey, and I pretty much immediately was able to connect with my grandparents, and, just was like, I hope you're not disappointed that I did this, but if, I wouldn't have done this, I wouldn't have been able to connect with you. And I really wanted to share with them how much I appreciated them, and how much I modeled my life after them. And as I'm 53 years old, when I was 20 years old, I really didn't have that headspace to say anything like that, nor had I had any life experience to even know that I was modeling my life kind of after them. And so it was very, very nice to be able to share that with them. And it was very nice um, to say goodbye to my grandmother, because I was present with my grandpa when my grandma died, and but she was not in any sort of lucid state. She wasn't talking. She wasn't, and so it was nice to be able to tell her how much I appreciated her and loved her, and it was just super cool. It was really, really nice to be able to do that with them. Um, and throughout the experience, they're playing the music and they're steering this whole experience. It really was, at times, so intense. And I at different times throughout, I'll go into more of what I experienced, but at different times I was crying so hard. I mean, harder than I've ever cried in my life. It was like incredible the amount of crying that I was doing. I could feel it. And so after kind of with my grandparents, I connected with my dad, and my dad um, raised me by himself. So when I was 7, my mom took off, and so it was just my dad and me. And it was he was a phenomenal dad, um, alcoholic, high function alcoholic. He had a very high stress job. He was a detective, a homicide detective. Was always there for me though, like all my sports, always there for me, and I deeply love him and appreciated him. And even more, I realized after I became a deputy sheriff and kind of understood what he went through um, while being a single dad. So my experience with him was interesting because these experiences are things that I'd never thought of. This one, when he said, hey, when your mom left, she stayed friends with my parents, meaning his parents, and that really bothered me. And you didn't really say anything about it or do anything about it. And like in this journey, I was just like, oh well. I mean, I was 7. I was 7 when that happened. I mean, I didn't know. And he's like, I know. And I said, I understand now. I get where you're coming from, how that would hurt you. And I apologize that I wasn't sensitive to that back then, but I was doing the best I could do. And we were both like, yeah, you know what? I was doing the best I could do. And it was also those little simple, like, doing the best you can do for basically all that up to that time in your life. Those messages just kept coming through, excuse me, throughout the journey. And so that one was, interesting. And it was good. We ended up, great, and it was all good. And we closed that door, but I'd never even thought about that up until that point, up until I was in that journey. Like that was brought up. And I guess it was deep down in there for me. And I'll say throughout the journey, this monster devil blackish form would pop up. And so, prepping for this, they would always say, hey, if anything, scary or anything comes up, you've gotta face it. You can't run from it. No. So every time this thing would come up, and I'd be like, all right, I guess it's time. We're leaning into this thing. And so, and I would lean into it and start going towards it. Every time it would turn into something good. Every single time it was like, I would, go head towards that. And then it turned into, I'm connecting with my wife. And it was like that message for me that I felt on that one was, you have to lean into hard things, and you have to go for it, because most of the time it turns out really good. And the thing that you're afraid of never even comes up. And so that was kind of my takeaway from that part of the journey, because it kept coming up. the next part was connecting with my wife. And, I've been married for 23 years. I have a wonderful wife. We have one child together. And she has been a phenomenal, wife, mom, supported me through a lot of stuff. And I was really wanting to, let her understand how much I loved her, how much I care for her, and just, and I got this incredible, feeling back that she knows that we're going to be together forever. And I'm not just saying like in this life, like we're going to be together forever. And it gave me incredible peace. And because I also knew that she was struggling with me going down to do that, and she was scared, and she was, I didn't have, they took our phones away. She didn't know what was going on, so I knew there was a lot of just she would be concerned, and I wanted to make a connection, and it felt as if we made the connection, and so that put me at ease quite a bit. And the next thing was my son, and so throughout my law enforcement career, you work a lot of hours, and this is no excuse, and I'm not a victim, or I'm just acknowledging kind of what transpired throughout my career. You work a lot of hours. You go to say I go to 10 to 20 calls a night. At least one of those people that I'm there dealing with does not want me there. Sometimes it's a hostile not wanting me there. Sometimes it's a violent not wanting me there. And you do that every single day, day in and day out. And you come home and you're, completely exhausted, and you're not wanting to make any decisions. You don't want to have to deal with anything. You basically just, you want to sit in a chair and try to get to a baseline, right? Because you're so drained. If you're at a busy agency, you're very drained. And then what ends up happening is you get called into work overtime, or you've got to go to court, or you're never fully replenished. You never get back to a baseline. And for me, unfortunately, my wife and my son, they would catch the rough end of that, of me being, short with them, having high expectations, me not wanting to make decisions, just horrible, not as good of a person as I know that I can be. And so when I connected with my son during this, I just explained to him, dude, I'm so sorry. And I am doing the best that I can do. And from here on out, it's going to be a different story. And he's like, I get it. And I'm doing the best that I can do. And so it was weird because we both were like, oh, well, yeah, okay. And we both were like, relationships take work, and we're workers. And so that's basically, what we're going to continue to do is work on our relationship. He's 20 now. And so it was cool because it was like one of those things where it's like, oh, okay, yeah, that's really simple. But even though like you those things, and you're like, yeah, relationships take work and all that stuff, but I felt it. I really felt these simple messages that we all know and we've all heard. With this, I felt it a very different way. And then one of the things that's very difficult when you are retiring is, well, for me, I'm just going to speak for me. It was difficult because after I crashed my motorcycle, I really didn't go back to work. So like, it was just like, I, didn't see my friends anymore. Even the people that you may not really like, you miss everybody, because it's gone. It's completely gone. And so, eventually they retired me in 2021, and they make you turn your duty weapon in. And so I was like, okay, cool. I got to turn my gun in. That's fine. And so I drive down to what's the regional training center, and I go to get the gun out of the trunk, and I started basically crying. I was like, oh my god, what is going on here? And this is like a big training center, and there's people walking around. I'm like, what is going on here? Why is this affecting me so much? I have other weapons. It's why is me turning this gun in tearing me up like this? And so I I came to the conclusion that you know that weapon was essentially could be my lifeline home. Like if I'm pulling a car over at 2 in the morning on East 14th and 165th Avenue, and there's four guys in that car, and I'm by myself, the only thing that may be keeping me from being able to the only thing keeping me to go home is possibly that weapon, and that now I have to like turn it in. And so at that time it was very difficult, and it might be hard for people to understand that. And I thought at that time I put that away. I thought at that time I was like, okay, I'm done with that. But it came up during my journey, and it was one of these times again where I was intensely crying, like to like all the breath was out of me crying. And what ended up happening was I had a funeral, and this sounds so silly. I had a funeral for my gun in the journey, and it was like, but it was closure for me. It was like that was truly, like, okay, I'm done. It's over. That part of my life's over. And so it was it felt great to get that kind of out, and I didn't know it was still there. Um, and then I had I had a dream a couple weeks before going down of two of my dogs that I had in the past. One was named Job, and one was named Bubba, and they were at two different times in my life. Job was when I was, I think, about 19, and the dog went all over the place with me. I had traveled all over the place. I shouldn't have probably had a dog at that time in my life, because I was lived one state, lived in another state. It wasn't cool. It wasn't, but he was just like a trooper. And once I finally went into the academy, my wife was living with me, and he ended up dying. And I couldn't leave the academy. I couldn't take care of him. And so she had to do all that stuff, and I felt horrible about it. And the same thing with my other dog, Bubba, which was like 3 or 4 years ago. He passed away. We live up in the mountains now, and he like went down to the bottom of the hill where we live, and I was in another state, and my wife had to take care of him. I didn't take care of him. So to make full circle here in the journey, Job is in this thing, and he's talking to me, and I'm like, dude, I am so sorry. And he's this, he's a Rottweiler, and he's just like super noble, and he's got this deep voice, and he's just like, oh, it's okay, it's okay. And again, I was crying super hard, and that was something that I had pushed down for a long time, and like I felt very bad about that, and that's, I believe, why it came up in my journey. And the same thing with Bubba. I mean, he was just like, it's okay, it's gonna, it's okay. You did the best you could do. You weren't there, it happened. So that was, yeah, that was the gist of it, and that stretched out over like 4 or 5 hours. So I'm condensing it, but it was phenomenal, to get those things out. The one thing that one of my intentions was to connect with my mom, and I kind of did. She also kept kind of popping in and out. Like she'd be off in the distance when I was dealing with something else, and I'd be like, well, hey, what do you, what's going on? And then she kind of disappear. And she wouldn't say anything. But one time I was able to kind of be like, hey, I mean, are you mad at me? Like, what did I do? Like, what's the deal? And and she wasn't talking. So I was like, do you think that I chose dad over you? What's going on? And she just nodded her head yes. And I was just like, well, you left. I didn't have a choice. Again, I was young. And so that one was really unfinished business. And it's interesting how that has popped up in during my integration too. And if we have time, I can explain that too. It was very interesting. But that's the only thing that, as far as like what I had written down, as far as intentions on what I want to kind of during this journey accomplish, and it was that. And so it was really cool. So do you want me to talk about coming home?
Sure, sure. It was
Okay.
so you had the one day sitting with psilocybin, and that was the only.
Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot. No, there's more. There's more to that. So had the one day with psilocybin. So then, we all kind of come out and we jumped in the pool, and you just kind of look at each other, and you're just like, oh, whoa, like, and you kind of start explaining, and then they're just, the people you're with are like, oh, I know, everybody had a really good experience. Um, it was um, it was super cool, like, and you kind of share a few things, and um, but you're still just kind of like, you're processing this incredible journey, and but you also know that they get that, and they get that you get that, so it's not, not a big deal. Um, we would also debrief later with the main facilitator, and just kind of talk about what we went through. And I also forgot to mention, throughout the retreat we did different little workshops. They did things to help us with integration, some things that you can do when you get home, Kundalini yoga, regular yoga, some other things that they were trying to help us with integration. And so I forgot to mention that was every morning. That was the first thing we would do, is we would do some sort of like activity to get us prepared for integration. So the second night, or so that night we had dinner, went to bed. Um, you know, I tried to write a bunch of stuff down. Excuse me. After, immediately after I wrote stuff down, and it was a freaking mess. It was just like, it was a mess. It's funny to look back on it. But the next day was Toad. So we basically, in the morning we had another ceremony, and I volunteered to go first. I'm like, I'm going first. So with Toad, it was the mushrooms. I think because I'd done them as a young man, I was not as, not that I wasn't concerned, but I think, if you've never done any of these things, and you've heard, oh, it's going to fry your brain, or you're going to, have a bad trip, or all of those things, they get imprinted on people. And so I was with people that had never done any sort of plant medicine. And so they were, very, very concerned and nervous. And I'm not saying that it wasn't to a degree, but I also knew, like, okay, I'm not going to die, it's going to be okay. But the Toad, I'd never done the Toad. And, that's a pretty big one. And it's also, you're smoking it out of a crystal methamphetamine pipe. Right. And so, my whole background is, I was arresting people for drugs, and, I'd get these pipes all the time. And so it's a really weird dichotomy for me. And but that's just one little piece of it. So we get up in the morning, fast, and then I'm the first to go. So everybody's got to go up to their room, because they don't want everybody like watching each person go through it, because you never know what's going to happen with the toad, right? Some people can start screaming or whatever, but they just didn't want everybody to be watching. So I just was, waiting in the kitchen area for them to prep everything out on the patio, and it just, and it's anticipating, and like a little nervous, and but it's cool though too, because I like the adventure, I like the adrenaline. So it was kind of, it was cool. And so I'm just waiting, and they do the concha shell, I think it is. They blow that shell, and that's kind of the demarcation of it's time to go. And then one of the facilitators comes and brings you down, and so Oscar, the medicine man, he prepares the toad and kind of explains what's going on and how he wants me to breathe, and I'm gonna he wants me to blow out hard, and then take a deep breath in, then blow out hard, and then we're gonna pull hard for 20 seconds, at least 20, a count of 20, and then they're gonna count backwards, and by the time I get to one, I'll be out. And so I was like, all right, let's let it rip. And so yeah, just took a rip off that thing, and I think they said maybe 10, and I felt a hand on my back, and then I was just out. And then it was just immediate, just freaking lights. And this one is very difficult for me to put into words or explain what happened. It was more of a feeling of bliss is the only word that I can even come up with. It was the absolute best feeling that I've ever had in my life, but not a feeling that like like crack cocaine or something, or it was just an understanding of I don't know. It was hard. It's just I still am trying to figure out how to explain that one. As I was kind of coming out, I again wanted to connect with my wife, and there's a little signal that we do that, like if we're, I don't know, at a party or whatever, and we're having a good time, and she's across the room, I'll do something like this, and then she will too. It's silly, but it's just something that we do, and it's like our little thing. And so I must have done that, because when I came out, they were like, "Oh, you were doing this thing, like you were riding a motorcycle or something." And I was like, "No, I wasn't. I wasn't riding a motorcycle. I was, communicating with my wife." And but yeah, I mean, I can't explain it other than it's the best feeling that I ever had in my life. And that as I came out, Andrea, who's a facilitator, she put her hand on my heart, and they helped me kind of sit up, and she's like, the way that you feel right now is the way that you should always feel. The what's happened is you have gotten so much stuff piled on, and you can't really get to this feeling with everything you've got piled on you. And so obviously I can't always feel exactly like that, but it's my North Star now. I'm striving to get to that point. And it's I feel so fortunate that I was able to have the opportunity. The Siren Project like gave me that opportunity. It's literally changed my life to where I will never be the same in a positive way. Like it's been unbelievable. My mind has been this sounds kind of woo woo or Tim Leary, but it opened, like expanded, and incredibly expanded, and it's been great. It's it's also been, coming home. It's been difficult for my wife, because she's been used to me for 23 years, this one way. I've always been edgy. I've always been just I wouldn't say angry, but edgy. And so when I came back, I was, like I've never felt at peace, like truly at peace. There's been maybe little moments here and there throughout my life, but I felt at peace, and and she could see that, and she was, like, wow, okay. Um, but her and I have patterns. We have patterns over 23 years that we um, trigger each other. And so one of the things when I came home, and I was just like, hey, I'm not doing that anymore. I'm not, and here's a simple one was we go RV camping a lot. And, like 60 plus times we've been RV camping, and pretty much every single time when we're leaving, I get stressed out. She gets stressed out. We trigger each other. We start fighting or arguing. And the first day is usually just horrible. It's just a horrible experience. I'm driving, and she's mad at me. And so we had pre-planned a trip to Pismo prior to me doing all this. And so I came home for a couple days and we went to Pismo, and I told her, I go, hey, it's going to be different. At least on my end, I'm not going to do that anymore, because we don't need to. It's silly. And a lot of the things that I was figuring out was on me. Like I was like, well, I'm getting the truck ready. I'm getting the camper ready and loaded up. She can be doing this. And then I'd have this super high expectation of she should be done by this time for us to leave. And it was lame, and it was not cool. And so when I came back, I was just like, in my head, I was like, you know what? I'm just going to help her get everything done and take the stress off of her. And so that we're not both stressed out. It's not that hard to do. And so, like, just simple little things like that. But she was still kind of waiting for that moment that, we were going to trigger each other. And it didn't happen. And so, it's just been little things like that, the neuroplasticity, the different, grooves that I've been grinding through there for, 53 years and 23 years with her. I'm trying to, go a different route. And it's been eye opening. And then I've always wanted to do transcendental meditation. I'd never pulled the plug on taking the course, and I explained to her, hey, I've always wanted to do this, and she's like, really? You've never said anything? And so so we took that together, and so we've been doing that together, which has been extremely helpful. And she also, I think, she was feeling like she was left behind. Like she felt like, oh my God, you're right here. Like, we have a lot of bonds over 23 years. And so we've been through a lot of things. We've been through deaths. We've been through financial hardships. We've been through, children. We've been through all kinds of stuff, but we've been through it together. But this life-changing thing, I did this, and she didn't do it. And so she's like, I feel like I'm, you're way up here and I'm down here and I'm not gonna be able to catch up. And so it's made her like think about things differently. And so she's like really expanding her her mind in what she needs to do to help herself, which has been awesome. It's been really cool. It's been that's been a really cool experience. But I'll share this one thing with everybody in that, I have been trying to figure out for so long, why am I so angry? Why am I so angst filled? Why do I have this insomnia? I thought it was my work. I thought it was this job. I thought it was, like um, not getting sleep, being, I'm hyper vigilant. I'm driving a patrol car. I'm looking at the computer. I'm listening to the radio mirror. I'm looking for crimes in progress. And you're constantly doing that. And you can't like turn it off. You can't turn it off at home. And so then what I would do that I didn't even realize I was doing is I'd have, the news app on my phone. I'd have all the social media on my phone. I'd have my email on my phone, my text messages. I'd be constantly looking at this stuff, expecting, and then it'd be some, dumb story in the news that um, I don't even need to be looking at. That the same thing happened 3 weeks ago. Um, it's the same thing over and over and over. I was making myself hyper vigilant at home, and I've been doing it since I've been retired. I still was doing this stuff, and so when I got home, I was like, "Hey, I'm turning my phone off. Like I'm going to turn it off, and I'm going to turn it off for a few days, and then when I turn it back on, I'm going to use the phone for just the phone, like to, communicate, um, maybe send a text, and I'm only going to use it from like 11 to 5. And then at one point I was like, I'm going to microdose the phone where I'm going to have it, 4 days on, 3 days off, or 2 days on and 3 days off or something. But doing that helped me a lot too. Like it was so simple. I was like, I have been making myself hyper vigilant when I didn't even need to be hyper vigilant, which was making me on edge and angry. And, you get caught up in the politics and you get caught up in the news. And you like when I send a text, I want an immediate response, so I'm constantly, and I'm judging, everybody else. Well, they're not giving, it's so ridiculous. So that was helping. But I also I still had these high expectations from my wife and my son. And like, it was killing me. Like, what is going on with me? And so I had meditated this was only 3 days ago. So I had meditated, I sat there and I was just kind of like thinking, and I thought, what is my, um, my mom leaving me when I was 7, could that be a factor in why I'm acting so angry and so with these high expectations for my family? So I look it all up, and it hit every single aspect of my life. Like as far as how I've been treating them, they'd been surrogates for my mom leaving me at 7, and I had been treating them like I was waiting for them to like do the same thing. And so it was a great revelation and understanding. And it was also, it's difficult because, my wife has known that for about 23 years. And so she has been internalizing this because she didn't want to open that wound. She didn't want to, um, tell me that that's what it was because she didn't want to hurt me. So she just took it. And so it was difficult because I'd been hurting her for that long, and my son, and which which sucks, which was horrible. Having said that, I would not have been able to do that or realize that without the medicine. I know that for a fact. Like I was just I was doing everything right, like yoga, all those things, and I was not able to make much progress at all to subside the anger, the anxiety, the insomnia, um, the PTSD. Like I just I couldn't do it. The talk therapy wouldn't. It just there's and what it was, and I truly believe it was the medicine. Like it was the medicine, and as difficult as this time right now is for my wife and I, because now we're like dealing with, like they've been taking the brunt of this for 23 years, and she's a wonderful person, and and we're definitely, we're good, and she's working through it, and she could very easily be resentful. She could very easily hang that over my head, and she's not. Um, so it's that's been, I would say the biggest like positive of this whole thing, and that happened 2 days ago. And I went to the retreat. I left the retreat September 23rd. So yeah, man, it shows how important the integration part of this is. Um, Dr. Lip was on
Yep.
this, and he was talking about squeezing as much as you can out of the integration, and that really struck a chord with me. I was like, yeah, like I'm going to squeeze as much as I can out of this, because um, you know, I forgot to say the overall arching intention was to be the best person I could be. And that in order for me to do that, I'm going to do whatever it takes, and um, squeeze that integration uh, as much as I can. But yeah, that's my story.
How do you feel?
I feel good. I mean, like, what's telling you?
Yeah, just right now in this moment.
No, I feel good. I like it. I like being able to share that, and I think it's incredibly important to be vulnerable. And that's not been an easy thing for me, my life, being raised by a dude, like a very, man's man. I didn't have the soft side of a mom, that I think is very important. And I think it's important to be vulnerable, and just to kind of like say how you're feeling. I'm not saying, when you're at the grocery store, start crying or anything like that, but I think it is important when it's appropriate to be vulnerable. And it does make me feel good to um, just be honest and open, and hoping that, maybe I can help someone. That's like now that's my goal is helping people, even if it's one person. Um, that's really what I want to do.
Yeah, there were a lot of themes that you brought up that resonated, and oddly enough, very similar phrasing that I have used or I would use. And yeah, it's interesting. You say, you wouldn't have been able to get here without the medicine, and I think really it's, the medicine is just this process of teaching us in a very intense way, almost like a high stress forcing you to release and, let go, surrender, the different ways of saying that. But, that is and I think the other side of that is peace. You've released, and you're not holding the tension of all these human struggles that we naturally have, that we've built up over time, and it's just all of that releases down, and you're able to see this other side. And for me, that's actually been how I frame my intention ongoing now. Is, if I'm ever sitting with, any of the medicines, is, you know continuing to practice the art of letting go. And it's and that's the integration for me too. Is it's all right, cool. This is just a practice session. It's a high intensity practice session that I'm gonna, have to deal with all these things. And then, you know the aftermath, the integration is, all right, cool. You learned all these, you learn what it feels like. You learn that muscle memory of what it feels like to release, what it feels like to let go. And now when you're faced with that situation, like, can you just let it go? Can you just release it, and not build the tension back up, like we're conditioned to do. Um, and yeah, it becomes a lot simpler. I don't want to say easier, but it becomes a lot more, you know, the understanding is there with what you said, and it's also the way that I frame it as well. Is we're just doing the best we could do,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know. And
Yeah. I mean,
when you, I'm a fairly new parent and have honestly felt and known this for years, anyways. But yeah, you come to these revelations of, oh, got it. No one has this figured out. My parents were just doing the best that they could do, you
right.
know, like
Totally.
any, you know, like, oh, they didn't do this or they did do that. It's, you know, you kind of let that go to the wayside thinking, well, I mean, they didn't have the playbook. They didn't have the
Right.
perfect formula.
Right.
You know, they're just doing the best that they could do. And,
Yeah.
you know, it's almost a liberating mindset when you um, project that onto anybody else that you're, you know, especially that you have relationships with, is,
Yeah.
hey, they're just, you know, they're doing the best that they can do. They're doing, you know, if they could do any better, they would be doing it.
Yeah.
You
Totally.
know.
Yeah. No, it's such a good point, and you know, like my my intention was never to, you know, have my wife or my son as a surrogate for like what my mom did to me, and um, so, you know, I told my wife, I said, you know, I don't resent my mom. I'm not angry with my mom. Because I don't believe that she would have that same intention. I don't think she'd have an intention to, you know what I mean? Like whatever happened, there was a reason for that. And so it would do me more harm to sit here and be angry and resentful and all that stuff. Now that I realized what was going on and what happened. Such a trip though. Like, you know, I'm 53 years old and that just hit me, you know, like, and the thing is, someone could have said this to me. I wouldn't have taken it. I would have been like, oh, okay, whatever. Yeah. I've been muscling through all of this stuff for such a long time that I just would keep on muscling through it. Like going down there, I felt like I weighed 360 pounds, and I came back and I weigh 180 pounds, and that's how I feel now. I feel like I weigh 180 pounds. I had been carrying, you know, an extra 180, and it's such a so much better feeling normal. I mean, for lack of, I think this is what normal feels like. I don't know, but I've struggled for so long with the anxiety and the anger, and now it all makes sense. It all, you know, it really makes sense. And then another thing that happened that was like not even, I didn't go down there with the intention I'm never drinking again, I'm never going to do edibles again, you know, but I have zero desire to drink or to do edibles, like absolutely. And I haven't, like, so we went to Pismo, like it's, you know, the annual, we're going to Pismo, we're going to be drinking around the fire, you know, that type of thing. And so I went down there and I was just like, oh, I don't feel like, I just don't feel like drinking.
Mhm.
And you know, I think I've also discovered that was perhaps a mask to try to help my anxiety and try to and help my anger. And maybe that's why I'm like, I don't have a desire anymore. It's really weird. And I'm not saying I will never drink again, but I just, for at this point, I'm just kind of like, oh, I don't really, I don't know. There's just zero desire. It's weird. I've never felt like that before, you know?
Yeah, I know that feeling as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's, again, right. It's not that, oh, I'm, you know, hard fast in this. It's just it's like, oh, I, you know, where I used to, my mindset was in that one way. Now it's like, ah, no, I don't need that.
Yeah, no, totally. And so
Crazy.
that was one thing that was a little bit, my wife was like, "Oh, well, you know, we go to a brewery like once a week and we would have a couple beers and we would just have these really intense conversations. They were always like really good conversations." And so she was like, "Oh, well, we're not going to go do that anymore." And I was like, "No, we're still going to have good conversations." And now I think we have like way better conversations. Like I think like way deeper. I'm way more present. I mean, I'm not looking at my phone. I'm not listening to a podcast. I'm not like watching the news. I'm so much more present with her and just listening to her. And it's and so like I think even this morning she said, like, wow, I love these conversations that we have because we do it every morning. We meditate in the morning, and then we just talk every morning. And she's like, I'm really loving these conversations. They're really beneficial and helpful. And I'm like, I know, they're great. So instead of the once a week thing we were doing at the brewery, now we're like every day we're having like these cool conversations. So it's been super cool.
Well, it's an awesome testimony. I'm
Yeah.
honored to have you share with me and the community here.
Well, I'm happy to be here, man.
Well, oh man, you are one of the new conscious agents of Reality Sandwich.
Yeah, right on. That's good. That's good.
Yeah, I am incredibly appreciative. Again, I mentioned, I hold such deep gratitude for anyone that is, comes on and shares like you did. That's, incredible. Just kind of, recounting. And, again, as I said before, like I sat here as well, and, all those same themes come up, and it's, at least for me, like I get so much fruit from it just because it's that reminder as well. It's like that
Yeah.
ongoing, reminder that, hey, these teachers are, they have common messages, and there's a connected nucleus, out there that is serving these messages, and being able to receive them, and kind of have that community is so awesome. So
Absolutely.
bravo. Super glad that we connected, and glad to have you as part of the family.
Right on. Thank you so much. I appreciate you.
Yeah, we'll be in touch soon.
All right, buddy.